I don't think people understand the gravity of what's happening in Turkey right now. In March of 2025, Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu was arrested on charges of corruption. İmamoğlu, a prominent figure in Turkey's opposition party, had been a vocal critic of President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's government. Many saw the arrest as politically motivated. They believed it was an attempt to silence a powerful opponent. The charges against İmamoğlu have been widely disputed by human rights groups. The arrest immediately sparked outrage across Turkey. Protests erupted in Istanbul and quickly spread to other major cities. Demonstrators demanded İmamoğlu's release and accused the government of corruption and authoritarianism. The situation escalated quickly, with police using tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds. The arrest of İmamoğlu marked a significant escalation in the ongoing political tensions in Turkey. It has been seen by many as a sign of Erdogan's increasing intolerance of dissent. The situation has drawn condemnation from international organizations. The arrest of İmamoğlu has raised serious concerns about the future of democracy in Turkey. It remains to be seen how the situation will unfold. However, one thing is certain: the stakes are incredibly high. The arrest of İmamoğlu ignited a wave of protests across Turkey. Thousands took to the streets in cities like Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. These were some of the largest demonstrations against Erdogan's government in years. Protesters from various backgrounds voiced their anger. They accused the government of undermining democracy. The government's response to the protests was swift and severe. Police used tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets to disperse crowds. Over 1,400 people were detained, including journalists covering the unrest. Human rights groups condemned the government's actions. They accused the authorities of using excessive force and suppressing free speech. The crackdown on protesters drew international criticism. Several countries and organizations called on Turkey to respect the right to peaceful assembly. The United Nations expressed concern over the excessive use of force against demonstrators. The European Union urged Turkish authorities to engage in dialogue and de-escalate the situation. Despite the crackdown, the protests continued for days. They highlighted the deep divisions within Turkish society. The government's harsh response only seemed to embolden the protesters. They vowed to continue demonstrating until İmamoğlu was released and their demands for democratic reforms were met. The political crisis in Turkey quickly spilled over into the economy. The Turkish lira, already facing pressure, plummeted to record lows against the US dollar. This drop exacerbated the country's existing economic woes, which included soaring inflation and high unemployment. Businesses in Turkey faced significant disruption due to the political instability. The uncertainty made it difficult to plan and invest. Companies operating in Turkey, both domestic and international, became wary of the unpredictable situation. The stock market experienced sharp declines, reflecting the growing lack of confidence in the economy. International investors reacted swiftly to the crisis, pulling billions of dollars out of Turkey. The capital flight further weakened the lira and put additional pressure on the already struggling economy. Credit rating agencies downgraded Turkey's sovereign debt, making it more expensive for the country to borrow money on international markets. The economic turmoil added another layer of complexity to the political crisis. The plummeting lira and the prospect of a deepening recession fueled public discontent with the government's handling of the situation. The economic fallout had the potential to further destabilize the country. The timing of İmamoğlu's arrest raised suspicions. It came just months before the potential announcement of candidates for the 2028 presidential election. İmamoğlu, with his popularity in Istanbul and across Turkey, was widely seen as a potential challenger to Erdogan. Adding to the speculation, discussions had been circulating within Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, or AKP, about a possible constitutional amendment. This amendment would allow Erdogan, who was already in his third term, to bypass the two-term limit and run for an unprecedented fourth term in 2028. Critics argued that the arrest of İmamoğlu was a blatant attempt to sideline a strong opponent and clear the path for Erdogan's continued grip on power. They pointed to the timing of the arrest and the lack of concrete evidence against İmamoğlu as proof of a politically motivated maneuver. The government denied any political motivations behind the arrest, maintaining that it was solely based on evidence of corruption. However, the timing and the swiftness of the crackdown on protests fueled skepticism both domestically and internationally. As of April 2025, Turkey's political future hangs in the balance. The arrest of İmamoğlu, the subsequent protests, and the government's harsh response have created a deeply uncertain and volatile environment. The economic turmoil triggered by the political crisis added another layer of complexity. The plummeting lira, halted investments, and growing public discontent pose significant challenges to the government's ability to manage the situation. Speculation about early elections is growing. The combined weight of political unrest, economic instability, and the constitutional controversy surrounding Erdoğan's potential fourth term has fueled uncertainty about the timing of the next election. The future of Turkey's democracy remains uncertain. The outcome of the current crisis will have far-reaching consequences for the country's political landscape, its economy, and its relationship with the international community.